I represent Mexico.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So, this is pretty much what I suspected was going on behind closed doors. Canelo Alvarez, he just came out, it's just been reported that he told PBC, and I quote, "If it's not Jermall, there's no fight in May." So even though Canelo Alvarez was offered way more money to fight David Benavidez, he's leaving that on the table for less money and telling PBC, "I will only fight Charlo. And if I can't get Charlo, I'm moving elsewhere," which means DAZN. And if he moves to DAZN, then he's pretty much in the same situation he was in before when he was stuck between a rock and a hard place, when he had the option to either fight David Benavidez and Jermall Charlo when he was dangerous, or at least more dangerous, or an Errol Spence fight before he lost to Terrence Crawford. That was the PBC deal. And then you had the 2-fight deal with DAZN, which was Dmitry Bivol and Gennady Golovkin. Of course, with the luck Canelo has had in his entire career fighting against European fighters, he went with the DAZN option. But you guys have to remember, Canelo Alvarez, he didn't want any of those options. Canelo wanted to fight the South African WBC Cruiserweight champion, who was a complete tomato can that was holding a belt, named Alangu Makabu. But to Canelo Alvarez's surprise, DAZN would not pay for that fight. They told him, "You're going to have to take on a real challenge." And for the first time since he was forced to fight Golovkin, he was once again forced to take on a tough challenge. And he ended up getting dominated by Bivol, and the ass whooping was so bad, Canelo Alvarez didn't even have the confidence to try to avenge the loss and take a rematch, even though Bivol offered to come down to 168 and fight Canelo. Remember, Canelo Alvarez, his excuse for losing was because he moved up to a higher weight class. Well, Bivol, he completely shut down that excuse when he offered to fight Canelo at 168. Canelo, he knew losing to Bivol in his own weight class and losing all of his belts would be way more embarrassing than losing to him in the first fight. So now Canelo Alvarez is in a similar situation, but this time the options are easier. This time he has some easy fights that he can take. When he had that option between PBC and DAZN before, all of the options were tough. Now when it comes to DAZN, he could possibly fight Jaime Munguia and Berlanga. And if Canelo Alvarez does this, he's going to receive an enormous amount of backlash. So I say, hey, if Canelo wants to do it, let him do it. If he wants to make himself look bad and all his fans that keep trying to defend him, let him do it. You're going to turn down a $55 million offer, which doesn't include pay-per-view, by the way. So that means after the pay-per-views, Canelo would make well over $100 million fighting against David Benavidez. You're going to turn that down, and you're going to fight lesser opposition for way less money. Canelo Alvarez is not daring to be great. He's daring to escape. He is daring to survive. When he does his ring walk, he should come out with Beyonce and have her sing, "I'm a survivor" for him. Now, y'all think I'm joking when I call him a survivor and say he's daring to escape. Listen to what his trainer Eddie Reynoso just said.
Creo que en esta etapa de la carrera de Saúl tenemos que ser bien cuidadosos en todo lo que vamos a hacer más adelante. ¿Por qué? Porque ya son los últimos años que va a tener Saúl como peleador, y tenemos que hacer realmente lo que le convenga a Saúl en sus intereses, y como te digo.
So this is what Eddie said. He said, "I think at this stage for Saul, we have to be very careful in everything we are going to do further on, because these are Saul's last years as a fighter, and we have to really do what is convenient for Saul and what's in his best interest," end quote. Canelo Alvarez is a survivor. Canelo is only 33 years old. His trainer is talking like he's the same age Floyd Mayweather was when he was fighting the likes of Canelo Alvarez and Manny Pacquiao. Floyd was damn near 40 years old when he fought Manny Pacquiao. He was 36 going on 37 when he fought Canelo. And Canelo was Floyd's version of a David Benavidez at that time. To the Mexican fans, remember when you guys used to always be in my comment section saying, "Oh, Canelo is just doing everything Floyd Mayweather did. So when is he going to do what Floyd Mayweather did?" You know, it's so funny because old media, especially over there on ESPN, Joe Tessitore, They're always trying to push this narrative. Oh man, when two Mexicans fight, it's the greatest thing ever. And they try to use this narrative to basically indirectly diss American fighters.
It's going to be a collision between two runaway trains. Well, the trains are getting ready. The coal is getting shoveled into the red-hot engines. If you like offense and very little defense, then sit back and enjoy. You know that old adage of hit and don't get hit? It doesn't apply here. Mexican style.
Joe Tessitore, he said all of that. And then as soon as they fought, Oscar Valdez came out, and what did he do? He completely boxed, moved around the ring, floating like a butterfly, stinging like a bee. Hit and not get hit is exactly what he did.
Burchelt right now is just trying to set up shop right now. You see him constantly gathering his rhythm, and also movement, keeping his distance from Valdez. Seeing a lot of respect from the champion. He's respecting the power and the speed. He's still trying to figure out his range against Oscar Valdez. Right now, Valdez is fighting a smart fight right now, using defense, attacking in the right spots, using his jab effectively. He's fighting the perfect fight right now, out at distance.
Propaganda at its finest. Joe Tessitore sitting over here saying there's going to be a collision between two runaway trains. More like two stray runaway dogs biting anyone that tries to catch them. Then he says, do you like offense with very little defense? There are no fighters at the top of the sport that's all offense and just a little defense. Because any fighter like that is complete food to a fighter that specializes in hitting and not being hit. You see, they all have the exact same agenda. Because what Joe Tessitore just described was pretty much Jim Lampley's Gaddy's List. Because when he was on HBO, they gave him his own show, which turned out to be a complete flop, by the way. But anyway, because at the time there were too many black people on the pound for pound list, Jim Lampley, he decided to come up with his own list, and he called it the Gaddy List. And this was supposed to be a list of fighters that got punched in the face, had no defense, and was supposed to be all action. So Jim Lampley, he would update this list on every episode depending on all the fights that took place that month. And whoever had the most action-packed fight, he would put them as number one on his Gaddy List. By the way, for some of you new boxing fans and casual boxing fans, Arturo Gatti was a champion that Floyd Mayweather beat the dog shit out of, which became one of Floyd Mayweather's most impressive knockout wins. This is the fighter that Jim Lampley decided to name his list after. Now, this is funny, though, because in some of the most ironic karma, the first week Jim Lampley introduced this Gaddy's List to the boxing world on his show, it happened to be right after Floyd Mayweather beat Miguel Cotto. And Jim Lampley was forced to put Floyd Mayweather as number one on his Gaddy List. And Jim Lampley, he hated Floyd Mayweather. In fact, he hated Floyd Mayweather so much that when HBO Boxing went out of business, they did an end of an era farewell video, and they didn't play one single clip of a Floyd Mayweather fight. But they made sure they played clips of Arturo Gatti fighting against Mickey Ward. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. Floyd Mayweather wasn't only the biggest star on HBO, he is the biggest star in boxing ever. In fact, he's the reason why HBO went out of business. Because Floyd Mayweather was never under contract with HBO. HBO, they never really cared about putting him under a contract. So Showtime, they took advantage of this opportunity and they signed him to a major contract. And even though Jim Lampley and Larry Merchant always treated Floyd Mayweather like shit, Floyd was still loyal enough to HBO to tell them to make him an offer so he could stay at HBO. And HBO didn't even try to make Floyd an offer. They just said, okay, well, you can leave. And that's when Floyd Mayweather went to Showtime with Al Heyman. And that's when Al Heyman completely monopolized the sport. You know, social media is really to blame for why HBO went out of business. Because race fans on the internet, they were so in love with Gennady Golovkin that HBO really started to think if Floyd Mayweather was hated by so many fans and everyone loves Gennady Golovkin, then that means we can make Golovkin just as big as Floyd Mayweather was. So HBO, they started looking for all the white hopes to replace Floyd Mayweather. But what they didn't understand is Floyd Mayweather was willing to fight all of the best opponents, and he was beating them. He was beating the likes of Diego Corrales, Castillo, Genaro Hernandez, and the list just goes on and on and on. Now, Golovkin, he was knocking everyone out, but he wasn't willing to fight the best. He didn't want to fight the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, Andre Ward. He didn't want to fight Edeslani Lara. He didn't want to fight James DeGale. And you cannot become a superstar if you're not willing to fight the best. So shortly after HBO learned this, they completely went out of business. With that being said, let's get back to what Joe Tessitore said. Now, the reason why I say this is propaganda at its finest, because the honest truth is, if you guys have been paying attention to a lot of these cards on ESPN and DAZN, what you will notice is on the undercard, when there are like two no-name Mexican fighters, but one of them is undefeated or one of them is a prospect, no one even pays attention to these cards. There's two Mexicans fighting against each other and no one even cares. And the reason why people are not paying attention, because they have no special effects, at least the ones I'm talking about, which are a lot on the undercards. If you ain't got no special effects, if you ain't got no superpowers, then it's boring what you're doing. We want to see skill. We want to see impressive technique. We want to see magic. Man, you could go anywhere and see two people who don't know how to fight get punched in the face. Hell, you could go to the club, a bar, Walmart, anywhere to see that. I'm telling you, man, some of them fights on them ESPN undercards are so damn boring. And like I said, usually when there's two Mexicans fighting. And I'm not talking about like a Raymond Marataya. I'm talking about, once again, these no-name undefeated Mexican prospects that they put on these undercards that have no special talent. And you can just tell off of watching them fighting, they ain't going nowhere in the sport. As soon as they step up in competition, even slightly, they're going to lose and we'll never hear about them again. And it's just so crazy because Joe Tessitore, an American broadcaster, is trying to convince fans that only when the Mexicans are fighting against each other, all the fans are in for a major treat. But the truth is, we're in for a treat usually when someone like Bruce Carrington is on the undercard, when someone like Abdullah Mason is on the undercard. That's when we're in for a treat, because then we're seeing real special talent. We're seeing special effects. We're seeing magic. We're seeing someone do something that the average person cannot do. We're seeing someone that we know is going far in the sport. Not only are Shushu, Mason, and Keyshawn Davis the best prospects on Top Rank, they're some of the best prospects in the world, and they're knocking out everybody. I mean, Joe Tessitore, he knows, for example, if they were to put a Mason, a Shushu in there with a Burchelt or Oscar Valdez, it would damn sure be a runaway train on a collision course. But Joe Tessitore, he's not going to promote a fight like that as a major treat for the fans because he knows the wrong guy is going to win. He don't care how many fireworks is involved if the American is going to win. You know, guys, if you notice, whenever they try to promote two Mexican fighters fighting against each other, oh, it's going to be a war, or even if they're not Mexican, even if it's just two fighters that are known for being aggressive, you will usually get one of them or even both of them that will surprise everyone and end up boxing. Because in the sport of boxing, you have to be versatile. Now, guys, everything that I'm saying, it's leading to a Canelo point that I'm about to make in a minute. And mind you, he's saying all of this sitting right next to Andre Ward and Tim Bradley. This was his way, once again, of trying to sneak diss black American fighters. But yet, Joe Tessitore is the same person who praises Lomachenko more than any Mexican fighter, more than any fighter on ESPN. And when it comes to Lomachenko, he brags about how good Lomachenko can hit and not be hit. He's the Matrix. Matter of fact, even when he was on HBO, they made some analogy saying he could jump in the water without getting wet. When they talk about they just like action, all offense and little bit defense, man, that's just a cover-up. He doesn't care what your style is. If you got the complexion for the protection, he only cares what your style is when you're American. With that all being said, let me get back to the main point I wanted to make. So Joe Tessitore and the rest of old media, they will once again talk about how Mexicans fighting against each other, those are the biggest fights. That's when you're in for a real treat. If they truly feel that way, how come they're not putting pressure on Canelo Alvarez to fight David Benavidez? You notice when it comes to that fight, they're either completely silent or they're defending Canelo Alvarez. Canelo doesn't have to fight him. This is what Chris Mannix came out and said. This is what Mike Coppinger came out and said. But of course, these are also the same white reporters that said that Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence, they have to fight against each other. Matter of fact, I remember when Bernardo Usana, ESPN's Bernardo Usana, he said that they are cowards if they don't fight against each other. He thought he was being slick. He said this on a Spanish version of ESPN. These are all the same people that said the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight needs to happen. Now all of a sudden when it comes to Canelo Alvarez, he can fight whoever he wants. Canelo has already proven himself, etc., etc. Well, you guys keep telling him that. Because if you want him to look like an absolute joke, then you guys are going to be very successful if he listens to you. Canelo Alvarez, a man that has 2 losses that he never avenged. He tests positive for PEDs. Every time he stepped up in competition, he either lost or won in a controversial fashion. We're talking about the only fighter I know that became a star by losing to a superstar. And this is the guy you guys are encouraging to duck more smoke at age 33? See, the truth is, old media and these race fans, they adore Canelo Alvarez so much, they'd rather see him avoid all of the smoke and retire as a coward rather than retire getting knocked out or suffering another loss. With that being said, I'm gonna wrap this video up. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, fever blisters, diabetic ulcers, this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called LO Decay Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to lodecay.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram. Fellas, I've got some great news for you. If you've lost your hair or have a receding hairline, the time has come when you can finally get your hairline back through a process called scalp micropigmentation. So here's how it works. It's a hair tattoo that replicates the look of your hair follicles when you have fully shaved it down. So to get this hookup, make sure you follow and contact my man Scalp Carolinas on Instagram. Let me tell you guys about Issa Israel Law Firm. It is a full-service legal practice based in Denver, Colorado, an emerging hub for combat sports and high-altitude training. If you're a fighter inside or outside of the ring and you need a law firm you can trust to fight for you, visit thefighterfirm.com or email help@iilawfirm.com. Legal representation is usually limited to plaintiffs or defendants in Colorado, but iFirm can help anyone in the world with trademarking their business name, logos, and U.S. immigration issues. This brother has been my attorney for a while and helped guide me through all kinds of business and civil issues, so make sure you guys go to thefighterfirm.com.